Outgrowing porn is the most important decision that you will ever make. Everything after you master that will become infinitely more easy, and life will become infinitely more fruitful, joyful, peaceful, loving, and abundant. Your life force is your bank account. And I mean that like quite literally. We are under attack. Like, these porn companies don't care about my plans, my dreams, my goals, my age, my relationship status, my religion, my nervous system, nothing. And they don't care about yours or any of the listeners. Like, they just see us as a means to an end, and that means to an end is profit. And so I remind guys and I help them to see that just like social media, you're scrolling and it's free. They're serving you an ad, so you're the product because they want you to click to buy something. And that's how porn works too. And so it's not your fault that you've been a victim of the system, but it is your responsibility as a man because it is your life.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and with over 12 years of meditation experience as a mindfulness trainer and coach for high performers, I've become obsessed with helping people break free from compulsive, unhealthy behaviors and addictions and step into a life of true freedom so that they can finally become their best selves and cultivate deeper and lasting fulfillment. I've created Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast, to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to master your mind and optimize your life. This is Unhooked. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Unhooked podcast. Today on Unhooked, I'm joined by Tyson Adams. Tyson is a trauma-informed IFS men's coach, a somatic bodyworker, and a psychedelic facilitator. After spending 20 years addicted to porn, Tyson outgrew it a decade ago and now devotes his life to helping men master their life force energy. He co-facilitates men's leadership intensives, works with couples on intimacy challenges, and brings a grounded, embodied approach to recovery that blends deep psychological work with practical, real-world tools. In this conversation, expect to learn how outgrowing porn transforms not just your sex life, but your full life force energy, the role of somatic practices in releasing the porn imprint from your nervous system, how to approach semen retention in a way that's empowering, sustainable, and connected to your values, and much more. And if you're listening to this episode because you're ready to break free from compulsive porn use yourself, I want to invite you to check out my coaching program, Unhooked Academy. It's where I help men get lasting freedom from porn without shame while building lives of integrity, discipline, and purpose. You can learn more at unhookedacademy.com. I also have a few spots that have just opened up for my one-on-one coaching, but spots are limited. So if you're interested in more direct support, please reach out to me online. You can go to jeremylipkowitz.com/intro. And now, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Tyson Adams. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Unhooked podcast. Joined today by my new friend and brother. We have a lot in common, Tyson Adams. Tyson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into a lot of things with you today. There's a lot of topics that you explore in your work that many of the people I work with and the people that message in are kind of perennially interested in some of these topics around semen retention and lovemaking and all the kind of the good juicy stuff. But I figured it'd be good to start off with just a little introduction for you. So could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I am trained as an IFS therapist, but I am a coach and I work primarily with men in porn and sex addiction, and then also with couples with intimacy challenges and issues. I also run 3 different men's groups that I co-facilitate, and I do psychedelic facilitation. I'm a body worker, and yeah, I'm stepping into a stepfather role here soon, and love the journey of becoming a father, and also anticipate having my own child at some point as well. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Beautiful. One of the things that you've said is that the way that a man treats his penis is how he treats everyone and everything in the world. I figure we just kind of jump straight into the deep end. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a big one. So that particular idea is what I would call a mythopoetic map. So it's not necessarily a capital T truth, but it is an orienting map that can help men. And if you embrace it, one, it does require a bit of confrontation within the psyche, because often men are not treating their penis kindly. And so the idea is that it's not wrong or bad or immoral or anything sinful. It's not an esoteric or a religious idea to use your body, primarily your penis, to feel better, when you're needing to have some sort of soothing. If you look back at religion over the course of thousands of years, masturbation, sex before marriage, these were very sinful and they would land you in hell. So we're moving out of the moralizing it, and we're just moving into more of the psychological, the practical, right? So if I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm sick, I'm bored, I'm avoidant, there's something that I need to do and I don't want to do it, and I'm just using my penis to feel better, what I noticed first in myself, as a parts work trained therapist, and also as a person that has worked with men around this topic, what I notice is if this is where we go to feel better, then that shows up in the projection of how we treat other people too. So if we're using ourselves to feel better, then we often can't see the projected aspect of the psyche that also uses other people to feel better. And that could be women, that could be your partner, that could be the way you do business, that could also be how you treat nature, taking more out of the sea, cutting down more of the trees than is necessary and or that is sustainable. And so when we begin to say, I'm sorry to one's own penis, like, hey, I'm sorry for not tuning in to check in and pushing you hard and all the time. When I was little, just like pushing it so far that I would have bruises, and, just like taking it to the point where my body was basically like really like not okay. And then how that way of treating oneself then ends up being reflected in the world. And then how we treat the world then gets reflected back to us. Right. And so a lot of people that have a lot of victim mentality, it's like, well, yeah, if you're victimizing your body and then you're treating other people in that same frequency and then you get that energy back, it's like this sort of vicious cycle that is tricky to get out of. But as we tune to our penis in a loving and kind manner, we apologize to it, for example. We take a pee, we look down and we treat it with kindness and care. We don't shame it. We don't say negative things to it. We don't hire people, to shame our body or watch cock shaming type of pornography. Like if we begin to love our own body, then we start to actually see that reflected in our external world too.
I love that idea. Just healing the relationship you have with yourself and all parts of yourself, your body, your penis, your psyche, developing a loving relationship with yourself rather than a self-critical or judgmental one or an abusive one.
Yeah, exactly. It's a call towards moving out of self-abuse, and not to say again that that's your fault. If you're out there and you are in that pattern, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility because it's your body, and you have to teach yourself how to treat your body kindly and nicely.
Yeah. I want to explore your history because one of the things that I think makes you good at what you do is you have experience with this yourself. And I always love to hear, the lived experience you have as someone who was addicted to porn and some of these other things. So can you take us back to those early days? Where did your addiction to porn begin?
Yep. I was 9, exploring a field with a couple friends, and we came across a board in the ground. We opened it, and there was a treasure trove of Playboys buried in the ground. I remember it very clearly because my mother watched Wheel of Fortune, which is a American game show TV thing that my mom loved. And I pulled out the Vanna White Playboy, and I remember hitting the deck because obviously there was something inside of me that knew that I could get in trouble for this. And I looked at it and I thought two things. One, make sure that nobody sees this because I could get the belt, right? I had been raised by an alcoholic father. And so I knew that there was punishment that could come from seeing this type of material. But then also I'm coming back here, and I'm coming back here alone as soon as possible. And I did. And that began a 20-year porn addiction. And when I was 11 and a half is when the internet popped, and I lived in a small town in Washington State. And we were the first town in America to get fiber wire put in. So we went from basically we didn't even have dial-up, just went straight to high-speed internet porn. Yeah. And there was a program called Kazaa, which was kind of like Napster or LimeWire file sharing. And that was a lottery of porn back then. There was no thumbnails. You just type in big boobs and you click go, and then you just click download, and then it would take 20 minutes to download, and then boom, you'd have some sort of pornography. And as I went through my trauma training, I realized oh, wow, this is not what the actual description was, meaning people would put all kinds of weird types of genres and things that were inappropriate for me to see as a young boy in there, things that were violent, things that included animals, things that were just way inappropriate. And I was still a prepubescent boy at that particular moment. I didn't even have armpit hair or pubic hair. And so, one of the things that I see a lot with men in penis dysmorphia is that they were watching porn before they were before they had pubic hair, and their penis wasn't even fully developed. Their bodies weren't developed. And they see these men on the screen with very large penises, and then they think their penis is very small because they're trapped thinking about it as they first saw pornography. And the porn influenced me in many ways because, early on, my first relationships, I was requesting them to shave. I was asking to do things that were inappropriate, that there's only one way that I could have known those things, because I was watching through porn. And it influenced and impacted all of my major relationships. And I don't mean just my relationships with partners, but just all of my relationships, because it was all my guy friends. It was always about seeking and finding and in and out groups. And do you have some porn? Let's do sleepovers and watch it, and so on and so forth. And then I went off to the University of Washington, and I joined a fraternity, which I didn't know what a fraternity was. But yeah, I joined a fraternity with 100 men living in one house with basically a database of, I don't know exactly, but certainly hundreds and hundreds of porn videos. And they were all indexed by porn star and genre. And we even had a porn chairman, and we joked around about getting off the internet at the end of the night because nobody could do their homework because everybody was just jerking off. And so kind of growing up in this belly of the beast of blackout culture and hookup culture and misogyny and hazing and all these weird things, uninitiated men initiating men through, making them run around in thongs and run outside and exercise and then pound beers and getting smoke blown in our faces and things. And so it was just a weird time to grow up where porn popped and was normalized, and guys were just watching it in the computer labs all the time. And you just walk in and see people fucking. And it was just this, oh, whatever. This is just kind of the life that I lived. And so, yeah, that was the beginning. And I'd love to hear your reflections. And also, if you would like to add, just so I have some context, briefly, what your journey was too. I'm curious to know how you first got introduced.
Yeah, very similar. I don't remember having kind of one of these moments. I guess there was a moment where we found a Playboy when I was in high school. But what I really remember was, Victoria's Secret's catalogs, and kind of that was my gateway. And then the internet, popping off, very similar. AOL kind of dial up and downloading. You search for a word and you download a photo at random, and as you say, you don't know what you're going to get. And then getting into college, very similar experience. I went to University of California at Davis. There was a big frat culture there, big party culture, a lot of drinking. So very similar experience to you of just uninitiated men initiating men kind of thing, and growing up in that just kind of distorted culture, where people didn't really know what they were doing, but you did things because it felt good, and you did them in secrecy and in a bit of shame. And so that's, for me, it just progressed as kind of a nightly thing with the internet, behind closed doors in my room. Yeah, very similar to you. I'm curious, to know if there was a moment where you recognized that it was a problem and a moment where you recognized you needed to change.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a very unique experience, but I was living in Laos in Southeast Asia. I had a coffee roaster and a cafe. I was living in the jungle doing philanthropic work. And I was still watching porn, though, in between girlfriends. And a girlfriend and I, we split up, and I was going back to live there. And I ended up having my last random hookup. And I was off in Thailand and used a spermicidal lubricant condom. And when I put it on, it set off pins and needles through my penis and urethra and bladder and pelvic floor. And it was both extremely painful, but also terrifying. And that's what sent me on a wild health journey through doctors all over. I went to Ayurvedic doctors in India. That's what took me to India. Went to Western doctors and Eastern doctors all through, Bangkok and even back in the US looking for solutions, and just couldn't find anything. And it was painful. I was peeing like 30 times a day, couldn't empty my bladder. And during that process, I decided to, quit watching porn. And the reason why I did that wasn't because I was, had guys around me saying, hey, try it. I wasn't in a no-fap culture. This is like 12 years ago. This is all pre-no-fap culture. It wasn't like trending or cool. It was literally a medical emergency. Like, I had to stop masturbating because it hurt so bad when I would ejaculate. And so I did 30 days of no porn. And one thing that happened was that I realized that I had normalized living my life at a quarter tank, and all of a sudden, boom, I had like so much energy to do so much work, and it felt amazing to like feel myself coming back alive. But what really changed my life was I remember walking out of my cafe one day, probably near the end of that 30 days, and I was happy, and I'd been able to like look myself in the mirror in the eyes for a couple days. I remember smoking a bunch of weed and like looking in the mirror and being like, who am I? And like, what is this about? And anyways, I walked out of my cafe, and there was all these little kids that would come up after school, little girls, little boys that come in and play. And I had this moment where I walked outside, and I was so happy. In Lao, you say sabadi, which is hello. And I was just like, sabadi, sabadi. And there's these little girls and these old women and these other women, and they're like different age ranges. And there was this moment when I looked at these girls, teenage girls and little girls and even grandmas. And it was the first time in my life that I realized that I wasn't sexualizing them, that I wasn't looking out at them in a assessment of whether they were attractive to me or not. And I realized, oh my God, I've been living in a bubble for 20 years of hypersexualizing every single female that comes into my vicinity and assessing whether I think they are attractive or not. And in that moment, it was like a joyful breakthrough, and then like a deep grief, kind of sort of simultaneously like pulling me in different directions. And in that moment, I just kind of like looked at this little girl that had been coming for, a year and a half or whatever in the eyes, and was like able to connect to her soul in a way where I could actually hold her presence without any of that weirdness. And I was like, and I was like, I am never going back. And that was what started this journey for me.
Wow. That's so great to hear. And it's really interesting. I think so many people who have a recovery story, it starts with some kind of rock bottom. And it's really interesting to hear, from your perspective, it didn't start from a rock bottom. It started from I just can't, masturbate for 30 days. I've got to take a break from this. And then just experiencing the benefits, and that being the beginning of kind of insight or awakening to what was going on. Yeah, for me, it was very similar in some ways of just realizing, as you mentioned, that hypersexualizing mind. And, what I noticed was just the way that I was a slave to that lust, a slave to that hypersexuality. Um, it was controlling, where I went. When I went to a cafe to study, it would always be kind of looking around to see who was there. And
Yep.
it's a horrible way to live. It's living in a prison. As you say, you're not
Yeah.
actually connecting or being present with what's there. You're just looking with hungry eyes.
And what happens if you're out there listening is that the people that are in your vicinity begin to feel safer because you're not sexualizing them, and you end up having a lot more real and beautiful conversations. I remember the little girls and the grandmas and the birds and the dogs, like people and things just started coming to me with the greatness of ease because I wasn't in that hypersexualized state where I was just like agitated all the time and like low of energy and just, head on a spindle kind of thing, like what you were just sharing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you're more at ease too, because you're not in this kind of constricted, hungry, I need that. It's, that felt experience of being at peace inside is, for me, that's the greatest gift, is that inner peace. Was it challenging for you? Like, were there moments of, was it just an easy, okay, I'm done with this, and there wasn't that much challenge, or were there moments of sliding back and being on some slippery slopes and relapse?
Well, that moment of breakthrough that I just described um, ended up lasting like 2.5 years of kind of like, once I had a breakthrough, of course, I started doing men's work and therapy and psychedelic work, and I moved back from Asia to the US. But it took 2.5 years to really stabilize myself. It didn't take 2.5 years to outgrow pornography. That it didn't take that long. But it still was showing up in my way of relating. It was still showing up in the ways in which I was attracting partners with a ton of trauma. I still had, because I was on a bunch of antibiotics that they gave me, it tanked my testosterone levels. So then I suffered from erectile dysfunction and then also premature ejaculation. And so even though the porn kind of went away, I still had all these other things that I had to work through. So it was a 2.5 year journey to get to a place of stability where I was like able to have a securely functioning relationship, to a degree. So, yeah.
If someone's listening to this and they're just starting out on their porn recovery journey, what advice would you give in terms of actually going on a healing journey and recovering? What do you recommend? Because I know a lot of people come to you for support with this. So is there kind of a protocol or a method that you implement for guys who are just starting?
This is more of a philosophical idea than it is necessarily a method, but I'll get to the method in a moment. But I help men to see that, the first questions that I ask men in connection calls basically go like this. All right. So did you have any form of sound elder guidance in the area of sex or sexuality as you were coming of age? And also, did you have any rite of passage into manhood of any kind? And 99.9% of men that find me, the answer is no. And often it's the opposite: hypersexualized father, or just nothing, or just a door, right? And so then I say, okay, was pornography your modality of sexual education? Yes. 99% of the guys say yes. And then I say, okay, and take me back through what some of the challenges were when you were coming of age, right? Were you a pimply kid? Were you chubby? Did you get bullied? Did you move towns, move homes? Did somebody die? Did your parents divorce? Did your dog die? Like, was there a lot of pressure on you in sports or school? And usually there's quite a few different things, right? And I say, okay, and you found pornography at that particular moment in time? And they're like, yep. And I say, okay, well, when those things started to creep up and those stresses started to come in, might it be true that you began to soothe yourself and find ways to use porn and masturbation as a way to get through those troubling times? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, okay. And just out of curiosity, how long between when you first started watching porn and when you had your first sexual experience with a real human? Some men my age might only been a few months, maybe a year. Some of the men that I've been working with that are a little bit younger, I'm 41. Some of the men that are 35 or less, I've worked with guys that saw porn and didn't have a partner for 10 years. I mean, we're talking 10 years of porn programming before having a real connection. Some men I work with have never had a partner, and they've been watching porn for 15, actually one guy 20 years, had never kissed a woman, right? So it's like, okay, just like calling awareness to the fact that we are under attack. Like these porn companies don't care about my plans, my dreams, my goals, my age, my relationship status, my religion, my nervous system, nothing. And they don't care about yours or any of the listeners. Like they just see us as a means to an end, and that means to an end is profit. And so I remind guys and I help them to see that just like social media, if you're scrolling and it's free, they're serving you an ad. So you're the product because they want you to click to buy something. And that's how porn works too. And so it's not your fault that you've been a victim of the system, but it is your responsibility as a man because it is your life. And so part of this is being able to be angry about that. Like we have to individually and collectively be angry at the fact that we are our life force has literally been commercialized. So the first lesson is you got to be able to stick your middle finger up and be like, fuck no. And like, fuck off. Like I ain't going to do that anymore. But then simultaneously, as I mentioned earlier, the porn got us through all of those tricky moments in time in life that were really hard. So then on the other side, we have to like bow to it, put our hands together in prayer and say, thank you, porn, for serving me for all that you did to get me through to where I'm at today. And if we don't possess the capacity to both be angry and to say thank you, then we don't have the capacity to move beyond that pseudo relationship and back into real human connection. So that's really where I begin with men.
That's awesome. I've never heard it framed that way, but I love it. I love, kind of channeling the anger and like letting yourself know it's okay to be angry at that and saying fuck you to the companies that have commercialized your life force, as you said. I think you said it so beautifully. And at the same time, to also, bow in gratitude to how it served you and how it supported you when you needed it as a coping mechanism for dealing with stress or being bullied or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because without the things that we escape into, we wouldn't have been able to survive. We would have offed ourselves in most cases as men because we were just so inundated by too much information or, too much depression. And so I just think it's important not to, not to take that into consideration that, these things are helping us. And and that's a parts work idea, right? These parts are intelligent and they're going to find ways in order to soothe when it's hard.
Yeah. Are there any, common mistakes that you see people making in recovery?
Yeah. Not incorporating the actual somatic, energetic imprint that porn leaves as residue in the system. And so what I mean by that is most coaching, most therapy is just talking. And you can talk, some men can talk or pray until they're blue in the face and nothing in their life changes. Nothing. Now, some men, you give them a massage gun, right? I got a massage gun right here. It's like you teach them how to use a massage gun in the root of their body, their legs, their perineum, their anus, underneath the balls, and learn how to, turn this on. And then at the same time, learning how to breathe and move that energy up and out, because the porn is still going to be the memories of the porn are still going to be in the mind, like what you watched. But as you masturbate in secrecy, silence, the same, like all, in a sympathetic nervous system, your body's just holding all that tension. So as you sit on, foam rollers, I got a bunch of foam rollers here on the ground or on these sort of, balls, these balls that you sit on the root, and you start to use the massage guns, you learn how to purge the actual energy out of your nervous system. And so it's a much faster and much easier process to outgrow pornography if you learn how to move the energy, the rage, the grief, the sadness, whatever is there locked in the root needs to be moved in order for it to be as effective and as direct as possible.
Is this related to the concept of sexual transmutation and kind of channeling and moving that energy throughout the body?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, if you're out there and you've done perineum practices and you've run the microcosmic orbit from the root to the crown and then down into the lower dantian, down the front channel, you might have an idea of what we're talking about here. But beyond just transmuting the energy, there's also just a lot of stuck, just karmic yuckness, right? I'll give you an example. I'm a psychedelic guy. I'm also a psychedelic facilitator. One of the ways in which I outgrew porn was taking a bunch of mushrooms, putting on an eye mask, putting on music and lying down. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't stop the pornography from just infiltrating. It's like, guys that have like a pretty active sexual dream world, kind of like that. It was just like dream after dream, but it was all, the energy. And so moving that energy, like shaking and purging and screaming and crying and just like letting it go was like my path. And that's one of the things that I help men do. But then in addition to that, once you kind of move all of that energetic yuck out, you finally feel calm in your nervous system. You're like, oh, like that's the same kind of feeling that I get after I ejaculate. Right. So I can see why men ejaculate. They ejaculate for not because of the porn. They're not addicted to the porn. They're addicted to the feeling, right? The
release, the kind of
the dopamine, the prolactin, and all of the things that happen. And so when you move all that energetic yuck out and then you stop watching porn, then your baseline becomes a peaceful nervous system. And so I just kind of feel happy and peaceful all day long, and I'm in flow. And then I notice when I'm out of flow and then I know how to get back in flow. Whereas if you're watching a bunch of porn, you're out of flow all the time. And then you might hit a moment of flow, but you fall back into dysregulation all the time.
And is this something that you teach guys how to do these practices? Or are there certain resources that you recommend people check out?
Yeah, I have I can give it to you for the show notes. It's called Perineum Power, Clearing the Porn Energetics Out of Your Body. It's a massage gun training, like 45 minutes where I just like let people see the energetic way to purge energy. It's like trauma release exercises, but with a massage gun. And it works. It works. It's effective. It de-armors the heart, de-armors the throat. You can do it in the ears, in the head, and like you feel like really calm when you're done.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. I mean, definitely, somatic therapy and just tuning into the body is so important. So I definitely encourage anyone listening to check that out. We'll link, that in the show notes for you guys. Kind of shifting on to that topic of sexual transmutation and semen retention. I know this is a big topic for you, something that you're really passionate about. How would you define semen retention? What is it and what is it for?
Yeah, a lot of guys hear that word and they immediately go nofap, right? And so if you're out there and you know what nofap is, it's a community of men that have sort of abstained from porn and masturbation. And where I think it goes wrong is like in the name, no fap. Fap is the sound of masturbating. No is don't masturbate. It's implied not to. I'm not about that. That's not the way I define it at all. So semen retention, in my definition, is it is not about never ejaculating again. It's just about elongating the space between each ejaculation so that your nervous system can more easily recover back to baseline. And then in addition to that, it's also about how you masturbate, and when you masturbate, and also with whom you ejaculate with, right? So how you do it, why you're doing it, and with whom you're doing it with. And so one of the things that's really important is when I look at pornography, and I don't mean any disrespect, but I look at it as the McDonald's drive-through, right? It's fast. You go through, keyword search, that's what I want. Okay, I want a Big Mac with fries, and you get there, they give it to you, you just stuff it in your mouth, and you get out and you throw the wrappers away, and you just carry on with your life. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Okay, so what is a different way of ejaculating? So a different way of masturbating and ejaculating would be to schedule it mindfully into your calendar. So for me, I did 2 years and 9 months of celibacy, like full monkhood, no personal development, no, it was sobriety and celibacy. And I did that I did the sobriety for a year, but I did the celibacy for 2 years and 9 months. And so during that time, I developed what's called a mindful masturbation practice. And so I would masturbate once a month only on the full moon cycle. And so when it would be the full moon, it would be scheduled in my calendar. And that would be the one day that I would go about doing it. And then the whole day, it was like Sabbath. I would go to the ocean, jump in, do yoga, slackline. I would go to do a float tank. I might microdose a little, journal, no work, no phone calls, no outside. Come home. The weather was bad. I would just do it here in my own home, set the mood, the candles, the lights, the music, massage. And I would take myself through a beautiful pleasure practice where I taught myself how to have, non-ejaculatory and full body orgasms. And then if it was a nice night, I would go out with the moon and I would channel and I would masturbate sitting up, and I would actually bring that energy through my system, through the microcosmic orbit, and have these full moon experiences where I would reconnect my sexuality back into the ecology, right? My eros into the ecology. I call it eco-eroticism.
Mm.
And so that's in a very intentional way, right? So if this is McDonald's and this is like going to the grocery store and getting a grass-fed steak and nice vegetables and a glass of wine and, like having a prayerful meal, right? And so it's like understanding that most men look at it as a job to do in secrecy, silence, and shame, whereas I was doing it as like a prayer and ritual. So going from like a chew, right, which is just like a tiny little, orgasm to like, and like being a fully embodied and fully orgasmic man. And then as you earn that right to your own pleasure by not outsourcing it to the external world or porn or another human, then you can cultivate that in yourself. And then you show up as a lover that way, right? So as you cultivate your own mindful masturbation practice, then you legitimately, and semen retention practice, then you bring those practices into your relationship, right? So I'm in a relationship now who I'm getting engaged with soon. And like, we will make love for, 4 or 5 days, like multiple times daily, because I'm not releasing, and then if I choose to release, it's by choice, right? That's full ejaculatory control and choice.
Mm.
So moving out of prematurely ejaculating when your body just does the thing and moving into, no, sex is prayer. The love is what is arousing, not the thing that you're doing. Instead of thinking your way to orgasm, you're now feeling your way to orgasm. And that could be orgasm or ejaculation, either or. So,
yeah. There's so much there. And I think, it's for two guys like you and me who are like, are you from California or just living in California?
I've been here for 10 years, but I'm from Washington State.
Okay. But from kind of the West Coast, Pacific Northwest. Yeah. Two guys like you and me who've grown up with a lot of psychedelics and, I think that is music to our ears. And I'm just curious for people out there listening who might feel like, okay, howling with the moon is a little bit too woo-woo for me. Or are there kind of like entry steps into how they can start to gain some of the benefits and the clarity of semen retention without necessarily having to go, as far as you have in this journey?
Yeah. I teach another mythopoetic map, and the map is simple. If it were the last time you're going to masturbate and you knew you were going to die tomorrow, how would you do it differently than how you're doing it right now?
Mm.
And just sit with that. And every time you choose to masturbate, just write it down and just journal for a little bit or reflect on it. Because I'm not here to say that is the path for you. In fact, like, don't fucking copy me. Find your own path and go discover that. But what I will say is take your masturbation experience out of a digital device underneath the covers and the pillows and leave your phone behind or leave it in the car and go get lost out in the forest, the desert, the jungle, wherever you're at, and go find a nice place and take off all your clothes and just learn how to be like a normal human being in this world that has no shame to be outside and connect to yourself. It doesn't mean you have to masturbate, but just go like hang out and like just understand that just just the sun on your naked body is pleasurable. Start there. That's just a simple place.
Yeah, I like that, that just encouraging people to find their own, like saying, okay, you don't have to follow the exact same path I did, but find some way to reclaim your sexual energy, reclaim your masculinity, whatever that means to you. Be a human on the planet and feel nature around you and be a part of nature again, as opposed to, a McDonald's Happy Meal plugged into
Sure.
the digital system.
Exactly. And then, more simply speaking, if we're not even going to go into there, just schedule it in. Every 3 days. If you're doing it every day, try for every 3 days. If you're doing it every 3 days, try for a week. If you're doing it every week, just put it in the calendar. And if it's not there, don't do it. That's a simple way to do semen retention. And they have apps that track it and things. So
Yeah. For a guy who's listening that has maybe gone on a journey of recovering from porn addiction, he's given up porn, but masturbation is something that he still uses in a compulsive kind of way, like every night, same time, just kind of end of the day. And he's realizing it's just this compulsive thing he does. It's not kind of an authentic, sexual outlet. Do you have any advice for how to break that cycle?
single man or partnered man?
Let's say both. I mean, what are the differences?
Well, for a single man, being tethered to your why is critical. If you're not tethered to your why, which is calling in a partner for real relationship, then it makes it very difficult to not masturbate, no matter if you're using porn or not. And then, for a man who is in a relationship, I'll just say that every time you're doing that, you're sabotaging your capacity to show up in that relationship fully, whether that's to your partner or whether that's to your family. And so that's a really important piece. But I'll also just, on a more logical front for both men, in our seminal fluid, there's proteins, vitamins, minerals, sugars, and amino acids, and there's quite a lot. And when that goes out too quickly, it pulls from the entire endocrine system and the hypothalamus. And what I've noticed is that every man who masturbates too much, whether it's porn or not porn, they get low after they masturbate, and then they have a secondary addiction, something else that they do to get themselves back up, whether it's Adderall, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, whatever, gambling, crypto. Like there are these, we get low with dopamine, so then we use other things to get our dopamine back up. And so logically speaking, it makes common sense and rational scientific sense to practice semen retention and to be mindful with it.
Yeah, beautiful. I guess, a big impact of semen retention is on, the man who's in a relationship and how it helps him show up in that relationship. I'm curious, how has all of this work that you've done, recovering from porn addiction, getting into semen retention, all of these things, how has it shifted the way that you relate to your romantic partner?
Yeah. So now sex is not a thing that I do. It's a place that we go. And so when we're making love, there's nothing happening in the mind. There might be a fleeting thought. Sure, you note it, you let it go. But I'm not thinking my way in or out of the orgasm. I am third eye into my cock, experiencing it and tracking my own arousal states. And there's absolutely no need for kink or power play or performance or anything, because it's just two beautiful beings actually communing, right? She got me this for my birthday. It's a North Star necklace. And she's like, I just hear you talking about the North Star in all the podcasts that you do. And I'm like, yeah. And I go, do you know what the North Star is? And she's like, yeah, it's like, and I'm like, no, babe, do you know what the North Star is? And she's like, oh, I guess not. And I said, it's where the love is what is arousing. Like my cock gets hard, not because you're sexy, although you are. It's because our love is pure, and that is what gets me aroused. And so that's the beacon, that's the North Star for you if you're in a relationship or you're seeking one, is, not the thing you're doing, but like the place that you go with your partner where you feel seen, where your eyes are open and you're connected and you're not drifting off into some fantasy land.
Yeah, I mean that's something I hear so often, particularly from partners of people struggling with porn addiction, is that during sex it just feels like they're off somewhere else. Their eyes are closed. It seems like they're just thinking of some porn scene that they watched, and it's a real disconnection in moments of intimacy. Is that kind of what you're talking about there? That like letting go of that, just being lost
Yeah.
in your own head and being present.
Yeah, it was called out in former relationships like, hey, where'd you go? Where are you?
Mm.
Like, I couldn't feel you. And I'm like, oh, what? I didn't even realize it. But yeah, I was off drifted into some other place, some other timeline, some other porn scene, some other girlfriend. And
Mm.
that's not safe for the woman that you're with or you. And you can't even be in ever present consent if you're disassociating.
Yeah. Are there any tools that you, or not tools, but practices for a man who wants to improve his intimacy with his partner and is on a journey? Maybe he's been practicing some meditation and mindfulness and letting go of porn. Are there things he can do to prepare himself or during intimacy that will help him drop into that state? As you mentioned, it's a place you go to, not something you do.
Mm-hmm.
Are there things that can help?
Yeah, I have a lot of things that I would say, but I would say, learning how to edge is really critical. So if 0 is a flaccid penis and 10 is ejaculation, learning how to track, like if 5 is a full erection and, between 5 and 9 is like where you play, right? Bringing yourself up and then back down and then up and then back down and learning how to regulate your nervous system and learning how to breathe and learning how to move your spine and learning how to shake energy and learning how to emote and let energy out through your breath. It's critical skills to be able to last long enough for your partner to have an orgasm. I mean, women take at least 20 minutes or so to even remotely get to that place. But the second thing that I'll say that I think is an even bigger deal is not focusing on trying to get her to anywhere, right? If we're trying to get her to come, trying to get her to orgasm so that we can have ours after, we've already missed the mark because now her orgasm is just a means to an end to get us back to our orgasm, right? So if you take orgasm and ejaculation off the table for you and for her, and all you're attuning to is what is pleasurable for your own body, like track your own pleasure and spread it. And as you attune back to your own pleasure, that will allow for her to be responsible for her pleasure. More pleasure will happen, more orgasms will happen naturally, but without any egoic force or where a part of you is trying to drive the intimacy forward.
Yeah.
It's a more blossoming.
Yeah. I remember I was traveling a few years ago and I was talking with a relationship therapist and she told me about this practice called orgasmic meditation. And it was like this practice of, for 15 minutes, you are going to, use your hands to kind of pleasure your partner and experience your partner without any expectations, without trying to get them to orgasm or trying to make anything happen, but just, real practice of being present with exploring the other person's body. And it was so, it was kind of so interesting, just letting go of the expectation or striving to make something happen.
Yeah.
And when you do that, so much can, as you say, can blossom out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a great practice.
If you could give your younger self, just starting on this journey, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Outgrowing porn is the most important decision that you will ever make. Everything after you master that will become infinitely more easy and life will become infinitely more fruitful, joyful, peaceful, loving, and abundant. Your life force is your bank account. And I mean that like quite literally. It is your energy. And if you want to be entrepreneurial, if you want to have friendship, if you want to get in shape, if you want to eat well, then you need to have life force in your bank account. And your life force is your chi. It's your spiritual it's your ability to spiritually evolve as well, right?
Mm.
So it's everything. So treat it as sacred because it is.
I think that's such an important message. And I love the way you frame it. And it's, kind of brings to mind what you brought up earlier in the conversation, but just these, porn companies, they don't care about your happiness. They don't care about your relationships. They don't care about your health or wellness. All they care about is their profit. And they have, commodified and turned your life force into a product that they're selling without you realizing it.
Yep.
And you have to take that back because that's all, all your resources to grow and evolve and be a good human, or is that life force energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Well, Tyson, it's been fascinating talking with you. I would love to bring you back on to talk more about kind of some of the psychedelic work you do someday. But for now, where can listeners go to learn more about your work and the stuff that you do?
Yeah, you can just find me on Instagram or Facebook at Tyson Adams with 2 underscores. My website's still being built, but I have a semen retention workshop that you can purchase from me. And yeah, just reach out, DM me. I'm super approachable. We can jam.
Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, I highly recommend checking out his Instagram. It's full of good stuff. And, you also get into kind of the wild and crazy world of AI and AI porn that's happening now, and, kind of the dangers of that. So that's another topic we could talk about next time.
Yep. Sounds good.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, Tyson. That's it for today, folks. We'll catch you guys on the next episode of Unhooked.